Hello and welcome back to Old Guy REI. Mikey and I are back again. We're going to be talking about we're going to be going over the highlights of our last Zoom meeting. Last Wednesday was September 17th. Thanks, Mikey, for being back with me.
Yeah, another good one.
Yeah. And you and I were just talking about the fact that I probably won't release the whole recording of this meeting because a couple of people came on and were sharing some really personal stuff and um, I don't know if they realized that we were recording, so we won't be releasing that. But I do want to talk about some of the things that they brought up because I think they were really special. And I think with saying that about not releasing the recording, one of the things that people come to our meetings have said is that they are able to talk about stuff to the group, realizing how safe a place it is to do that. So I definitely want to make sure people realize that we don't just throw the information out there, especially in cases like this. But the meeting started off with um, Jasek, who is with us weekly, talking about your market in Pittsburgh. He went to the meetup with you guys uh, a week or so ago, and he's really diving into the market. Going to start talking with property managers and stuff like that. And you spoke about that meetup previously, and you talked about some people that you met that I guess sounded different than or gave you a different impression online versus meeting them in person. How was that different?
It's I just don't know what to expect when I'm meeting people, and sometimes you don't know what's what between online versus in person. But I think it's just a representation of ORAT. It's somehow this group, it just attracts the right people. And when I'm having conversations with Rad or Jasek or Bolt Stevens, Jack and Cynthia and everyone else that was involved, Andy and Karina and Elena. There's just so much people. Sorry if I'm missing someone else's name out there, but the conversations we were able to have, the one-on-ones I was able to talk with people about, it was so good just to get to know each other better and understanding that, hey, these people might not want to invest in the same areas I'm investing in. They might see something else out here that they like better. And it makes all the more sense because what Jasek is trying to do is different than what I'm trying to do. And Steven has his location set out. The other Steven already has his house hack going. And then you have Jack and Cynthia doing what they're doing in different areas as well. But we can all learn from each other in the same market and meeting all the different realtors like Jeremy and Liam and Alex, the big brokerage owner. And yeah, there's so many different ideas like Greg, the contractor too. I'm trying to talk to all of these people. They all have different opinions, and I'm trying to figure out what works best for my investing because there could be competing opinions. So I'm trying to have to sparse that out and figure out what is the best decision for me. And that's something I've been having to go through during my time back and looking over everything that I went through.
Yeah, I think it was really special too that you got to see your properties in person. That's one thing that Cynthia and I look forward to doing. We haven't seen any of our properties in person, and it's really great to have that support. I know you have the support of the whole group, but then to find that tighter group that is investing in your market or is interested in your market, like you said, the agents and contractors and handymen that you got to meet in person, some you're working with on some of your properties. I think that's really great, and I think it's important too. We we had a few different topics that night that kind of were a little bit random, but one of the other folks that joined the call was talking about she just moved into her new house hack in Atlanta from Florida, where she left her current house hack. And she had a friend or mentor that had recommended a contractor for her. And when she ended up getting to Atlanta, she realized that the work wasn't up to par, or it wasn't at least up to her standards. And so she was kind of bummed about the fact that she thought she overpaid for the work that she got. And people in the group offered suggestions if she felt like she wanted to lodge a complaint or anything like that. So a lot of it was the typical places like the Better Business Bureau, um, Contractor State License Board, Consumer Affairs, and things like that if she wanted to move forward. So she was grateful. She's grateful for the group and the meeting for that reason, that she always gets great feedback. And whether she decides that's the way she wants to go or not, at least she has more options than she did when we started. What did you think about hearing her situation? I know it's, at least from what I took away, it's not always great to hear people going through struggles, but you and I have said before, we learn more from people's struggles than from somebody's wins, maybe.
It's just optimism in that, because even after she had went through that, she was able to find new contractors, and they understood what she was going through and said, "We'll get this right. We'll make this right." There's even people on the call that said, "Hey, I'm gonna be in Atlanta. If you ever want us to have words with that contractor in question, be happy to do it." Nothing threatening, but just to let them know this wasn't right. I think it should be done better, or what can you do to resolve this? But the fact that she works so much overtime, 60, 80 hours a week, and she said it's her health and her time. She felt like it was being taken away from her. But then she was thinking about this and said, as long as I'm standing in the end of this, and then we were talking about Coach Carson, the just don't die phrase, we're going to be left stronger after this. And even you might have some relation because of what you went through, getting a quote from a repair department. Then you had your own resources, you brought them in, and it was like incredible news for you.
Yeah, that is incredible. I think going back to what she was going through, and I guess I never really thought about it like that. It always hurts to pay money for something you don't feel like you're getting your money's worth. But then when, like you just said, it's the time. How many hours did we have to work to raise that money, right? How much time did we take away from being with our family? So that even compounds it that much more. I think maybe I'm glad I didn't realize that at the time, or I would have probably done something crazy. But again, to have the support from people in the group, there are several other contractors in the group, and that's just the kind of people they are, right? They want to help wherever they can. And so I think you're right. I think as long as we don't die, we will be stronger coming through it. We did have that experience this week where one of our tenants put in a request because there was a leak. And when our property manager sent their plumbers out to look at it, we got a quote back. It was $3,800. They were planning on like taking out the whole plumbing stack and all the way through the vent roof. And I just thought I would like a plumber that we've worked with in the past to at least put eyes on it, give us his opinion. And if that's what it was, fine. But like I sent you his bill, they were going to charge 38. If they had to cut a cabinet back open to get to the plumbing, they weren't going to fix it. They weren't going to patch it. If they had to disturb brick on the exterior, they weren't going to patch any of that. So I felt really bad about that situation. So our plumber went out. We were able to get the tenant's information to pass on to him so he could set up an appointment. He was there. He called me. He had already started working on it. It took him about 4 hours to finish the job, and his bill was $430. And that's just kind of made me sick to think about it, right? Because the other plumber would have gotten the job done, but then we would have had more expense to patch up everything he opened up. And you and I were talking just now about seriously thinking about self-managing at least these properties. We have 3 there in St. Louis, and we always feel like we overpay. And I think I have a little bit of an advantage on a lot of investors because I am a contractor, so I can understand what they're talking about. I don't just say, okay, do it. Um, and I call them on things that I don't think are valid points. So one of these days, you and I started a list of our concerns when we consider self-managing. You mentioned Hem Lane that you've been diving into. I think in markets where there is a large population, we have a better chance of Hem Lane actually having a list of vendors that they can call for repairs. Some of our properties are kind of rural, so that list would be almost nothing. We'd have to come up with our own people. So we'll be doing our homework, and hopefully we'll be able to bring some good information to the group and to these recordings too on how we're getting through that if we decide to self-manage or partially self-manage.
And that's what I think about property management. They have all different types of landlords with different types of ways they want to run their landlording. I think we are more into it. Like we really try to get into things. And that's why I feel a little better being able to meet the tenants, being able to have their contact info, and we can schedule our own crews in where you got your own plumber, and then now I'm trying to build out my own HVAC and those type of smaller things. And I've worked with my own contractor, and it's just those smaller things that we can do any way to get an edge. And
Yeah, I think part of the what you made me just think about, for example, you can't fly out every time you get a new tenant, right? To sign leases or meet them. I think meeting them was great for you because you've already established, text communication and arranging for other contractors to come in and do small things. That will save you quite a bit of money. I, I guess if you had pretty deep pockets, it wouldn't matter and you could fly out every time you needed to, but most of us don't. And that's a big challenge. Maybe that's, some people wonder why we're investing at such a distance. We're in California, you're in Hawaii, we're both in the Midwest. And it was the way that we were able to get in. So we're learning along the way. We're figuring out all these answers to all these questions that we're coming up against. But yeah, I think once we get through it and we're able to do it for a few years and still have properties, working after that, we'll be stronger for it. And speaking of, new tenants, and I think that's one of the bigger challenges I see for me. Like, if one of your tenants move out, you need people in place to come in and do the move out inspection and list the property after you do the make ready repairs and screen tenants and things like that. So those are all things we're going to be figuring out here. Uh, One of the topics that night was if you have a tenant, and I think maybe Sam alluded to this with one of his tenants, right? He doesn't want smoking in his units. And one of the people that he was screening said he wasn't a smoker, but Sam has cameras at his properties and saw the guy smoking outside. So if the tenant is qualified and you find out something like that, people in the group said that we could not discriminate for a lot of reasons, but there are other reasons that you could bring up that could help you avoid a tenant that you have bad feelings about. And these are just things that come up week to week. on our call that are helpful. There was another friend that was talking about how, we go into we go through life, and like for me and Cynthia, we're together, we're in it all the way, but and you invest in a property, say you're house hacking a property, and then Cynthia decides this isn't for her, and we get a divorce or whatever. You and I were also talking about how tomorrow isn't guaranteed. We've spoken about that before. And for me, I want to try to have everything together. Just say, for example, if I died tomorrow or something, that Cynthia would be able to keep going and keep running the business if she wants to. And she'll know, because I've pretty much been dealing with everything from the beginning. I know our PMs, I know our contractors, I know how the banks are set up. So it's important for her to have all that information on hand if she needed to take over for any reason, or, heaven forbid, if something happened to both of us and our son needed to take over the business. If he wants to do that, or if he wants to sell everything, at least he'll know where everything's at, right? Who to contact for certain things. But um, in that case, uh, our friend is going through a divorce, and I think thankfully they decided that she was fine with him keeping the property, and she was just going to go on her way and make her life the way she thought she wanted to have it. Um, so again, I mean, I hope people realize this is a safe place to talk about things. If you don't want to be recorded, we don't need to record it. If it's something we can edit out, we will edit it out. But this night it was kind of all jumbled up, kind of hard to separate those conversations with everything else that was going on that night. Um, have you given any thought to what I just said about, because I know you just recently got married, and hopefully you and your wife are talking about the business. I know her being from Japan, things are very different for her, and you being here, hopefully, I think your hope is that eventually you will end up in Japan too. But you're going to try things here for a while too. Now that you've been to Pittsburgh and you like that area, I think you guys might try that out. But as far as discussing the business, do you think the same way? Do you think you want her to be able to know what you're doing, what you're working towards for the both of you? And, I always say, I don't mean to sound morbid, but if something happened and you weren't here tomorrow, would she know what to do?
You wouldn't. And we've talked about that. I said I want to set something up where, say you don't even want to manage or have anything to do with the properties, I understand, but at least give you the pathway to sell them. Because Olivia at the One Rental Time, the last year's event, that's what she said. And she gave a great statement, is like, remember, for couples, when there's support both ways, and if the husband is in charge of the portfolio, make sure if something were to happen to you that the wife is taken care of. And that stuck with me, and that's something I have to think about. And like that, I know with Pittsburgh, there's the transfer taxes if you change it from your personal name into a trust, and there's those type of things I have to research. But it is a good point and something I should consider.
Yeah, for us so far, we don't have any LLCs, or at least the properties are not in LLCs. Everything is in Cynthia's and my name together. But we haven't gone as far as putting the plan together. If, like when my mom passed away, I was the executor of her estate. So that made it easier for me to, distribute to any other beneficiaries in the family, and things like that. So to at least have something like that set up, at least, all our bank accounts are in both our names. So Cynthia won't have a hard time. She can still access the money if she needs to. Um, hopefully she won't take it and run beforehand, but that's a possibility too. Uh, So I think that's important for us to think about. Always in the beginning, we're always, buy, let's get set, and then we leave the other stuff until later on. But some things you shouldn't leave till later on.
I did give a copy of my credit card to my wife. I mailed it to her in Japan, and I don't know the reactions I was getting from long tenured husbands. It wasn't good. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I think for the most part, I think most of them were just kidding. I think, but we've run across that in the group too. Like I just said, it's not always the husband, but in the cases we've heard, the husband is doing all this, hoping for a better life for the family later on, and the wife isn't so on board. I think a lot of wives changed their minds because they got to go to the event last year and meet all of the crazy people that are investing in real estate and realizing it was a big thing and how committed they were. Um, so a lot of them jumped on board and are very supportive, even more supportive now than they were before, because they realize that it can work and that the husband or the wife that's into it all the way is just trying to make the future better for the both of them. And I've said also before that maybe the couples aren't a good match, right? Because if you're with someone who's not with you, whether it's religiously or morally or financially or whatever that is, that they say sometimes that if a couple can make it through a remodel on their home and still be married when they're done, that they're a good fit. But it's something simple like that. If you guys don't align on all these different levels, maybe the partner isn't right for you in the beginning. You know, it's sad to say, but it's the truth.
I wonder how much of a bigger test it would be remodel with one bathroom or remodel with 1.5 to two bathrooms. That's the true
Yeah,
test.
yeah. I mean, sometimes I get, I'm bouncing things off of Cynthia, and she's very straightforward. And if if I've been dealing with a property manager and challenges with that property manager for some time, she'll hear it and she'll say, "Well, why do we still have that property manager? I would have dropped him way back 3 months ago." And most of the time she's right. We're different in that way. I guess I'm a little more forgiving, but it is business, right? The longer you linger, the more you lose. So I think we make a good team, and that balance is really critical. Some of the other folks had jumped in with challenges. I think Troy was sharing some of his challenges dealing with code enforcement in his market. I believe they have a commercial building that they rent out as some type of venue, but they've been getting inspections along the way. And I've had that experience. If you get a different inspector each time, they have a different point of view and they're going to bring up things that the last guy didn't bring up. And it's like, why can't you guys just get all this together and give us all the information at once so we can fix it all and move on? But this time they were dealing with, I guess they thought they didn't have enough exits for the amount of people that the place could hold. So he was dealing on with that. Have you run across any issues with permits or anything in your market or your properties that you've had to deal with like that?
Fortunately, I haven't. Not
Mm,
yet. Yeah.
yeah, that's good. And I just shared with you, we did have that happen to us. We're remodeling a bathroom in one of our places, and it's a triplex. One of the other units is vacant, so the tenant agreed to use that bathroom and shower while theirs is being remodeled. But I guess they got tired of how long it was taking, and they called the city. All the work was done fine, and the inspector noted that. But now that they did that, the process is going to take a couple days longer because we've had to wait for those inspections. So I think they kind of shot themselves in the foot, and I don't understand why the tenant would do that. I would think they would just be happy that they're getting a new bathroom, right? Even if it took, so it's probably taken between a week and two. Now it's going to take two, maybe a few more days. So you just never know. but again, it's a learning experience. That kind of led the group to the discussion of a bad, having a bad tenant. And this person was saying they had a tenant that didn't always pay on time. They were getting further and further behind, and they were trying to work with them. And they were thinking about offering like cash for keys. We'll pay you to move out. And I think my mind went straight to what Matt always tells us, right? He would never give cash for keys because that's just passing a bad tenant on to another landlord. And I feel the same way. We want to protect our other landlords from getting a bad tenant or at least help wherever we can. What did you think about that?
I'm similar where we follow the mentorship, what they teach. And I know in this case there were some it was like situational. So there was other things that investor was doing. So it wasn't truly cash for keys. There was like other stuff added in there to make it sure that if it did get passed down, it would get caught by another. So there
Mhm.
was like some extra things that was added on to that.
Yeah, I think you're talking about the fact that if they were still owed rent, that they would send them to collections.
Mhm.
At least that way, I think that would show up if another landlord ran their background check, things like that that could be done. And I know a lot of us fear the fact that if we evict a tenant, that they're going to trash our place. And I know that has happened to some people, but um, and then those costs obviously could be added to the collections. But on the other side, the sooner you get them out, get the place fixed up, get it rented, the better off that you'll be. And I know it is hard. We've shared recently, we had what I would consider a good turnover. The costs were like under a couple $100. And that is very rare. Most of the time it's the other way around where you got to pay 3 to 6 thousand bucks to get the place ready to go.
I was thinking that might be a record that
It,
turnover costs.
yeah, I've never heard of one lower. At least that's a record for us. But outside of the meeting is what else is going on. I think we don't get to talk too much about stuff like that, and I always threaten to do one of these lives. That way we can get feedback at the moment that we're discussing these things. I just have to figure out how to do it. But is everything else going well in your world?
Yeah, going well. And I did want to mention someone had talked about Convoy and they had mentioned they were going through that process with them, but one of the things was you can't refi after 5 years. So I thought that was interesting. Matt on his live stream says he owns over 300 toilets and he always recommends the Gerber Viper. And the only clogs he gets are from the tenants. It's if it's human waste or toilet paper, no problem. But if it's anything outside of that, that's when the clogs usually happen. So that just goes to show the Gerber Viper, that's the way to go. The one thing I really liked on Dion's live stream is he was saying Scott Trench and Coach Carson, he was in a BP meeting with them, and he said it felt weird to him because those are the people he like looked up to, and he would listen to their books, get information. But honestly, that's how I felt too when I first started joining Dion's course calls and Dion's meetings. So it's kind of funny to hear that kind of mirror each other. But the one thing was the course calls I really liked is he did this concept around reserves. He would hear everyone's answers about that concept, but he actually went back to people hearing their answers, and it was like a harsh truth type of sermon. And I really like that because it's like critical, but in a good way, where we all have thick skin, we can take it, and it's how can he just wants us to be better investors. so he can see what we're doing, what our thought process is in that moment, and he can come back to us and say, actually, I would change this or I would change that. And I found that really beneficial for us.
Yeah, I think those meetings are really special. And it's nice that once you buy the course, this isn't a sales pitch or anything, but once you do buy the course, every other month he has class calls each week, and you can keep coming to those. You don't have to rebuy the course or anything. And I think that's where we get the most value. You know, he like you said, thick skin. He teases me a lot about having thick skin, and I think I've told him in the past, you know, I told him use me. You know, if I can you can use me as an example of something I did wrong, or hopefully something I did right, but that hasn't come up yet. The I'm willing, I'm open to share. And I've told you before, sometimes I think I overshare a lot, but that's the only way I know how to be. And that's the only way we can get true help, right? If the person you're sharing with knows all the facts. If you keep half the information out of the equation, they can't give you the right help. And I think that there was a new person on that call this week. And I know, like you just said, when we're new, I don't know, we're kind of, what do you call it? Starstruck, maybe for lack of a better term, right? I'm actually talking to Dion face to face, or whoever it might be, whatever meeting you're in. But I appreciate the honest truth. Like you said, he asked us a question, we gave our thoughts, and then he told us how he sees it or how he would have done it. And that's not right for everybody, right? The way Dion does it might not be right for everybody, but at least you get a different point of view. And that I've shared with Mark, you know, the financial firefighter, who we always joke around with, but he he actually changed my view on something we spoke about a couple of weeks ago. And I was on with him, and maybe it was Lindsay and someone else, Chris Webb, maybe. But he was talking about, is it smarter to rent or to buy a home? And my first answer was it's better to buy a home for obvious reasons. But then when he started sharing the positives about renting, he made me think, and I saw it in a different way. And I agreed with him after we were done with that conversation. So, you know, that's what I mean about Dion. He does that a lot. He makes us think about all these different things, all these different ways. And I know I'm better for it. I can help my family better because of it. So I think if they're, and that's the same with Matt and Zuber, right? Because they have these 20 years of experience. We're still here at 4 and 5, and you at 2, right? I mean, you've been in the game longer than 2, but I'm sure you see it the same way. You're way better off now being involved in all these groups and all these meetings and stuff, just learning new stuff.
Yeah, that's one thing I took from Pittsburgh. I'm talking with a realtor who owns 50 units. I'm talking to a owner of a brokerage who owns 200 units. Then you're talking with a contractor. It's just their level of conversation is so different. When I ask them what their buy box is, they're all leaning more towards the newer stuff. They're like, we don't want to deal with the old stuff anymore. I'm looking for side by sides, newer stuff, flat lots, all these things. So I take all those things in, and even how we talk about Dion, where I think we're so in the now, and then Dion is looking at it with all of his decade or his decade in, however long it is, and he says, "No, to me, I like what you're doing. I like your numbers. I would change this, but big picture, you're doing okay."
Mhm.
And just hearing that gives you that confidence, but it also lets you know, hey, maybe I do got to take a step back every once in a while and see what I'm really trying to build. It's not Rome is built now. It's that brick by brick. As long as the bricks are being laid in the right sections, I think that's really helpful for us.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great point. And I think moving forward, it would be nice, like I said, we could figure out how to go live one of these days because people do comment on our videos. It would be nice to get more of their opinions so we could maybe put a little bit more information out about different topics like that. But um, and we'll get it done. Like I mentioned, Mark, and he's been trying to help me figure out how to do. I think he uses Restream. That seems to be easier to go live and things like that. I think we've done a fair job just learning Zoom and how to record and those kinds of things. But I'd like to up my game, I know. And that was a topic that I've been considering this week about, like Matt says, become elite at something. And, you know, for us, part of it, that is real estate, become elite at whatever type of investing you're doing, whatever, if it's long-term buy and hold, if it's BRRRRs or whatever it might be, just do that and do it great. And so that means a lot of things for me, getting back to the Zoom and recordings and trying to take that to the next level and do it the best I can. Um, and even with my business, I was thinking the other day, my business has carried us all these years. I've been doing it for over 30 years and it's made us a great living. It hasn't made us wealthy, but and I think I didn't take it to the next level, which I should have years ago. But but now I can do that with whatever I'm looking into these days. So I would encourage people to take that to heart, to just do the best, learn as much as you can and be the best at what you're doing. And like Dion and the guys are, they say they're pulling us up with them. You don't find too many people doing that, so you should grab on while you can, while you have the opportunity. But I think in our future, yours and mine, if you're up for it, we'll get into some of these other conversations. I know people enjoy the weekly updates. They don't have to listen to the whole meeting if they don't have time or if they don't want to. So they catch the highlights and then they can dig in if they want after the fact. But I think it's valuable too, these other things that we talk about that are going on with us each week that could help people. So thank you for being here. And I'll look forward to seeing you again next week.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me on, Frank.
Great. Thank you.
See ya.